Hello, Mr. Lightman. I'm going to do my 5-minute video for an interview about the nature of philosophy. So, here I go. What is the purpose of philosophy? Well, this question can be seen as quite personal because I think that everyone has their own kind of purpose for philosophy. But in essence, I would think that philosophy is more about you questioning not only other people's conclusions or truths or values, but also your own. And I think that by doing this, you can kind of either achieve a bit more clarity on your own issues, on your own truths, or actually being reminded that there are other views about your own truths and making sure if you are actually sure about them. And yes. Do you agree with this? Is the second question. Do you agree with this claim? Philosophy is useful only when it involves helping others. Well, I think you can link this question to the previous question that it's philosophy is about being sure of your own truths and questioning your own truths and maybe questioning others. I think that if you question someone else's truths or values in a constructive way or like constructive criticism, I think if they are smart enough or at least good thinkers, they would see this as a good opportunity to reinforce their own values, And I think by if you question someone else in a constructive way or like critical way, they can either adapt their values, maybe tilt them a little bit to your side, or maybe they can make sure that they are confident about them. And if you question them, they can either while questioning, they come up with arguments that maybe they didn't know they have, or maybe they are forced to look back to why they think what they think. And I think this is a good way of helping anyone. I think it's not probably not directly helping them, but in a way, it does. What does it mean to live a good life? Well, there are very different positions about this. Plato would argue that living a good life would be to try to control your desires, not to devoid yourself from them necessarily, but for example, the carriage example that we used in class, that he controls them. They move him forward to some extent, but he controls them, and because some desires can be destructive. For example, you can use the example of rape. Maybe some people have a very very strong desire of doing something of this sort, but the ability to hold back your desires, I think, Plato argues that is kind of crucial to living a good life. However, Nietzsche, I don't know how it's pronounced, would argue kind of the opposite, that we are fueled by desires and it's impossible to completely devoid yourself from them because we interpret everything through one pair of eyes that we have, and it goes through our thought process, and our thought process is kind of corrupted by our own desires. And I think this is kind of the point. What does it mean to philosophize? Well, according to the textbook, to philosophize is to gather knowledge, not only to gather knowledge, but to use it and take a peek on what's behind it. Like, not interpret all knowledge as true and reach to your own knowledge about the issues which you wanna address. And well, to me, philosophizing means questioning why someone may think that something is true, not necessarily me, not necessarily anyone that I know of, but someone. Do you think philosophy is important? Well, yes, very. Because some people don't know about the history of philosophy, but because without philosophy, we wouldn't probably, well, at some extent we would, but philosophy was the spark that kind of led to modern science as we know it, because philosophy in essence is can be reduced to questioning, and we started to question things, and it'd be dangerous not to question yourself as well, because if you assume that something is true and never question yourself, this thing that is true can be morally wrong and you haven't even given a second thought about it. Yeah. Does doing philosophy make one happier? Well, it's kind of a difficult subject because we can see the example of Nietzsche, which he suffered from depression a big chunk of his life, and I think that I'm not sure, I'm not sure if he was able to, if he had the ability to live in ignorance. I probably think that his brain was wired in some way that he overthinked everything, and overthinking is not necessarily a bad way, but if you, it can lead to, well, we know Nietzsche as a great philosopher, but it can lead to despair in some sense. Next question. RM Hare argues we all have a blick, as something that we assume to be true. Do you think philosophy can make us overcome this blick? Well, I think that there are some blicks that you probably won't ever be able to overcome, but I think philosophy can probably make you aware of these blicks. So if you're aware of these blicks, you can structure your thoughts, your line of thoughts, and your arguments in a way that they kind of round themselves around this blick, so that you aren't seen as someone who doesn't question your own values. Do you think that anyone can philosophize? Yes, I think they do, if they are kind of instructed to the correct line, to the correct path. For example, even secular people, well, I'm saying even secular people can follow the cosmological argument and philosophize about that, that there has to be something that led, that started everything, that there must have been something that argues behind the self-evidence principle of I think, therefore I am. What allows humans to philosophize? Well, philosophy probably came, in my hypothesis, that philosophy probably came because because we're curious, and humans started to trying to answer questions, answering the unknown. So we probably started with religions. So we associated what we didn't know to the supernatural, and then then came the first philosopher, probably, who was Thales. Some consider him the first philosopher because he started to question things, and he probably was the person who gave rise to modern science. And then came Socrates, and he also started to question things. So I think it's curiosity which leads to philosophy. Ironic because it rhymes. What does philosophy contribute to society? Well, philosophy has contributed and will contribute and is contributing lots to society, because I think it's useful to implement some degree of philosophy to our lives, because for example, philosophers often question social structure and dissect the social structure of how we live and how power works in our society, that can be argued with philosophy, that can be dissected using philosophy, and I think that's very important. And also, science has seen lots of contribution um, due to it, due to philosophy, like for example, quantum mechanics, which is kind of a boundary where philosophy and physics overlap. And yeah, those are all the questions. Thank you, sir.